Okay. Hi everyone. My name is Benito. Welcome to Benito's Chronicles. Um this is my first video. Yeah. So who am I? My name is Benito. I've been playing The Sims for about 6 years. And so I have been playing with the same Sim family for I think also around 6 years, like I would say like around the same time, I think. I'm currently at gen 48, and so my goal right now is to reach gen 50 to eventually get to 100. I'm just taking one generation at a time, one gen at a time, while doing this. So the reason why I created this channel was to kind of like talk about my sim family, uh to kind of like talk about like how it started, like how I've been keeping up with this family, like why am I keep playing with this family, like what has happened throughout the family. And that is the reason why this channel currently exists. The goal essentially is to post every week, hopefully, one sim who is important or integral to the world of my, the world lore of my sim game, my sim file or sim game. And yeah, who's iconic and who has like very important, who has a very interesting story. Essentially, that is the goal. So it's not only going to be like sims who are related to my family, but like also like sim who are iconic and who also have their own story and their own lore that I think will be interesting to kind of like make. So the goal is essentially the first 10 generations. We're talking about Sims, but I don't have pictures, so many of them, so I'll be recreating them in CAS. But if I do like get to the generations where I have pictures, I'll be posting like pictures and showing you the story and the lore and everything like that. But yeah, I hope you enjoy. So let us begin. So today's sim is going to be Mintzy. Uh, Mintzy is essentially an orphan. He was raised in the Landgrab orphanage. Um, the story essentially is that he never knew where he came from. Like he doesn't know his family, doesn't know his parents, doesn't know anything about himself. But Minzy never questioned it. He never thought about like where he comes from. He's like, oh, I'm here. Minzy got his name as well. It's actually a nickname, but it's just his name. Because he has like very minty green eyes, so people were always like, "Oh, Minzy, Minzy, Minzy," and that's like how it his nickname became his like actual name. But yeah, at this orphanage, they have this tradition where when you become a young adult, you are kind of like, you do a DNA test essentially to see, like, where do you come from? Do you have any family members? Do you have any cultural backgrounds, etc., etc., etc.? So, Minzy, like every other kid, before he becomes a young adult, he does this DNA test. And a few days before he gets to become a young adult or to age up, something interesting happens. Mincy, he is about to have his like a few days before his birthday, so it's like he's a bit excited but also a bit sad because that means that he has to leave the orphanage. But a man arrives at the orphanage, and his name is
My
Jeff.
name is Jeff.
Jeff is a historian who is obsessed with the history of like the sim nations and the sim like world. And one of his biggest obsession is the Tebe Empire. The Tebe Empire is essentially an empire in my sim world that used to rule all the neighborhoods and all the locations in my sim world. Like every neighborhood, country, location was part of that empire. And it's a very interesting timeline because essentially the Tebe Empire were at war with the Landgrabs, and as you guys can guess, the Tebe Empire lost because the Landgrabs won the war. Now, what does this have to do with Minzy? Minzy doing his DNA test, his DNA was in set, his DNA was put into the system, and it kind of like brought back a connection. Now, Mintzy learns that he's a direct descendant of Sir Bowick. He's been told by this historian Jeff that his ancestor was Sir Bowick, a legendary knight who was the guard of Princess Cordelia of House Tebe. She was the heir to the Tebe Empire. But the thing is, during the Great War between the Tebe Empire and the Landgrabs, Sir Bowick and Princess Cordelia disappeared. They vanished. And nobody knew what happened to them. But recently, an archaeologist essentially found Sir Bowick's remains in a cave. He was put in a very beautiful casket. His legendary sword was missing, but you know, through the DNA test, they learned that Mintzy he's the descendant of Sir Bowick. So for the sim world, this is like a big thing because this is a very big thing. Mintzy is no longer just a regular orphan. He is now a descendant of a very legendary figure, a historical figure that some people have always wondered, like, if Sir Bowick was, if he didn't disappear, would the Lankas have still won the war? Because he was a brilliant knight. He was an amazing knight. He was an amazing fighter. So that was one of the reasons why a lot of people felt like the Lankaps probably got rid of Sir Bowick so that they could have won. So because of this, Nancy is a descendant of the Landgrabs, right? So you have Nancy Landgrab, you have Mintzy. Like people were very like, oh, two descendants of like waging factions because you have the Thebe Empire who were trying to keep and protect their nation, and you have the Landgrabs who are stealing the land. So it was like a big war, and so a lot of people were thinking like, will this like restart like this tension or this tension and war between the Landgrabs and Mintzy, who is a Saberi now. Um, but Nancy was not scared at all because what power does Mintzy have? Nancy Landgrab is
I ain't gonna lie, me too. When I went on her page and seen her pictures, I said, "Oh, jump scare."
a Landgrab. Landgrab own everything. Your electricity, your internet, your housing. They own everything. The school you go to is Landgrab High School, middle school, primary school. Like everything is owned by the Landgrabs.
This is Trump, everything, and the sheriff lives next door.
Of Mintzy, but Nancy did not want to kind of like cause any tension or any like difficulty or any like weird like ness between her and Mintzy. So Nancy was like, she supported him. She's like, oh, you're a descendant of him. That's very nice, very cool, very amazing, very wonderful. And she kind of like, as gift to Mintzy, she gave him a piece of land that she told him belonged to her ancestor. So this was like a very big thing for people because they were like, oh, Nancy is like being nice to Mintzy. Nancy's like she's not trying to restart the ancient rivalry between the Siberis and the Landgrabs. Um Also, like, there were pictures being put into the magazines and the newspaper of Lancy visiting the orphanage, Lancy taking pictures with Mintzy before he was even known. So like people were like, there is definitely no issue or problem with um Mintzy and Nancy. And the same thing for Mintzy. Mintzy loved Nancy. Like Nancy came every Winterfest to the orphanage and she brought gifts for him and also the other children at the orphanage. So like he never saw Nancy as like a villain or any bad person. Not that Nancy's not a bad person. She is very much a bad person. But Mintzy does not know that. You see, the land that Nancy gave to Mintzy was cursed. She gave him a cursed land. Now, who cursed this land? That's a different story for another time. But Mintzy was given this nice land from Nancy. He's kind of like in the public, and yeah, there's a lot of like pressure on him. Um So yeah, Mintzy is definitely struggling a little bit because he's struggling with his own identity as like Mintzy, because he's like, am I just Mintzy the regular orphan, or am I actually like he's struggling with his identity. But he's also struggling with money because even though he's a descendant of the legendary knight, Mintzy does not have the wealth of a noble person. He doesn't have the wealth or the power of a noble person. He's just a regular person. And even though he got the land from Nancy, the land had debt on it. Like he had to pay the debt. He had to pay like the debt that he owed from that land. So because of that, Nancy kind of like gave up on his identity. Like he was just like, I'm just Mintzy. Like I'm not Mintzy so bad, I'm just Mintzy at this point. So Mintzy needed a job. He needed a job. He needed a job that was good paying. That was like he just needed a really good job. And so one of the kids at the orphanage, his name is Joe. Joe reached out to Mintzy. I was like, "Hey, I got this really good job at this like space station. It's like a really, really good job. Like it pays good. Everything is wonderful. Everything's amazing." And Mintzy was like, "Damn, like so fast, so quick. Like I just okay, yeah, I would like this job. Like yeah." But Joe was like, "Well, the job is not really legal." And Mintzy was like, what you talking about? Like you can work at this place, but like you do have to like, smuggle from time to time. And he was like, what do you mean smuggle? He was like, yeah, like you work at this station and I will like get you a good word in, but like you have to sometimes smuggle some goods, like you can smuggle some boxes for me. And that's pretty much it. Like, and that was pretty much what Joe said to Mintzy. And Mintzy was like, okay. Like Mintzy was very desperate for money. Like he needed the cash. He needed the money. Like he needed the money to pay off the debt because he didn't want to like that debt to like loom over him. So Mintzy ended up accepting the deal. He was like, "Okay, I'm gonna work for you. Cool, fine. I will smuggle some goods." And Mintzy started to work for the space station. And even though he was like working there, he was kind of like a celebrity because people were like, "Oh, like you're Mintzy Saberi, like descendant of like Bowick." So Mintzy was like kind of likable to people. Like people liked Mintzy. Mintzy had like a very nice, like a magnetic, like not like he had a magnetic personality. But working there, Mintzy, he would have sworn that he hears like weird alien like he hears like weird sounds in those boxes, like those weird he hears like weird sounds in those cargos.
That's suspicious. That's
But he was
weird.
always told by his manager, his bosses, like, don't ask any questions, just do your job and keep it moving. Um, and sometimes his friend Joe would be like, "Hey, bring me a box." And Mintzy would like make sure he brings like not a big ass box that people would figure out, but he would bring like a small box. And because Mintzy was so likable at his job, nobody would ever question him because even though they were like there's some missing boxes, nobody would ever question Mintzy because Mintzy was good at his job. He was good at his job. He was a good smuggler. Um, but yeah, Mintzy was working at this space station. He was doing a good job. He was making good money. But one day, Joe disappears. He doesn't like normally Mintzy gets like messages from Joe or Joe tells him like okay cargo got delivered da da da, but he didn't get any message from Joe anymore, and it started to become like a day turned to a week turned to a month, and Joe disappearing like this. Like Mintzy knows Joe would never disappear like this, and Mintzy was kind of like scared because he's like, oh, what if Joe got arrested and he could like end up like ruining his life. So there was so much tension um on like there was so much pressure on Mintzy as well for that. But Mintzy was like, okay, let me just be smart, let me just be calm, let me not even do anything, let me not do anything weird, let me have an alibi. So Mintzy was trying to make sure that he was like not captured, like if Joe were to start talking that he would not throw his name under the bus. But yeah, and that is pretty much the start of Mintzy. Um, to talk about more about Mintzy, I need to introduce some other characters, some other people. So that will be something I will be doing next week, um, or hopefully next week. But yeah, so this is a story. This is the beginning start of the story of Mintzy, because even though Mintzy is to himself Mintzy, there's still that inner turmoil of who he is. Is he a descendant of a legendary knight, you know, here to change the course of history? Or is he just Mintzy, an orphan with a fancy last name trying to just survive? But yeah, hope you enjoyed. Thank you for watching and goodbye.